dear friends, wonderful to be with you. Today we are going to have a very exciting program, and thank you, AnaRina, for coming. This is wonderful. So you're from originally from South Africa.
Correct.
And you make Aliyah a few years ago. You work with the Jewish agency to bring people in
immigration, Aliyah as we call it.
That's it. And you work after with the City of David, which is very exciting, knowing where is the City of David, which was the ancient Jerusalem. So you have done all this work. You've done a great work for people to know more about it. Loads of videos about it. It's wonderful. And now, my dear friends, we're going to speak about the timing, why Zion, why people have to focus back into Jerusalem, and what is her name, and all of that. You know, if you remember, Jerusalem was a beautiful city, but small, and after you had the exile, all the Jewish people going all around, I mean, they were dispersed in the world, and Jerusalem just went to sleep. And I like to call her like the sleeping beauty.
Mm-hmm. There we go.
Yeah, and it's like there is a passage in Isaiah, let me see, Isaiah 42, and it's written, "Speak tenderly to Jerusalem, to Jerusalem." And there, when I look in Hebrew, it's like speak to her heart, which is even more like, it's very important. So thank you for coming. Thank you to speak about that. You have now a new, you are doing something else. You're like in a new step, and is aligned with Zion.
Correct.
Which is beautiful. Do you want to speak to us about it?
Nathalie, I'm so excited. Yes, I started a new initiative because of all the things that I saw that's happening with Jerusalem itself. I thought it's so important to get people to align correctly with Jerusalem, and we will talk a little bit more about that. I want to touch on two things that you said. The first thing is, it's, in the Jewish tradition, it said when God created the world, He gave 9/10 of beauty to Jerusalem. Means a tenth went to the rest of creation. So can you imagine how beautiful this city actually is? And that's why we have to really look with spiritual eyes where she was and where she will ultimately be again, a praise to the earth. And what is interesting is that when Abram came to meet with Melchizedek, Melchizedek was the king of Salem. And in Hebrew we say Shalem. And it's the same root word as Shalom. Exactly. So Abram met with this king, the king of righteousness, within this city called Salem. And Salem is actually the foundation of the city of David, the ancient biblical Jerusalem. But something interesting happened. They broke bread together, they drank wine together like we do on Shabbat. But something that people don't always see is that Abram paid a tithe to Jerusalem or to Salem. And here he comes and he partners with God, because God already put 9/10 of beauty there. And he comes and he puts the other 10th in there. So that's why we are always partners in bringing Jerusalem to the shalom, to the wholeness. Pray for the shalom of Jerusalem, which doesn't mean peace. Pray for the wholeness of Jerusalem. And that's how we have a task. We have a calling to be connected to her. The
and
other thing...
sorry. And I like to say, when you say that, it's like God called Abraham, and he was the first one who was calling into the name of God.
Correct.
But he had in mind that it was just not for the Jewish people, but like the nations.
All the nations.
Yeah.
And that's why this is so important. The other thing is, you said that this sleeping beauty has to wake up. If you go to the verse that says, "Shake off your dust, arise, take your rightful place, O Jerusalem." The word there is hit na'ari. Na'ar means youth. So it doesn't only mean to shake off your dust, it means to wake up and to come back to your youth, to reawaken yourself. So she's literally waking up, and she's renewing herself while she's shaking off the dust.
Wonderful. Now, we know when we read our Bible, we see Jerusalem, but there is another name, Zion. Can you speak a bit about that? Because it's like, I've learned certain things about it, but a lot of us, we didn't know, and I want the people really to hear from you. You know what? No, because it's important that we reconnect with her and with her people. And you are Jewish, and I think it's very important for us as Christians to reconnect and to join what God is doing with you in the city. And so here we go. Let us.
Correct.
Yeah.
Wow, it's amazing. I just quickly want to speak about the name Yerushalayim, just to orientate ourselves, because Jerusalem is mentioned as Jerusalem or Zion. So in the Bible, 660 times Yerushalem, only a few times Yerushalayim. In that word, a plural, which tells us that there are two Jerusalems, a Jerusalem in heaven and a Jerusalem on earth. That's the word Yerushalayim, and it's very important that we call her that, because in that we connect the earthly Jerusalem with the heavenly Jerusalem, and very important to understand that the earthly Jerusalem plays a pivotal part in the redemption process. Let's get to the word Zion. Zion basically means in Hebrew something that stands out, up and out. So it's something that you can focus towards. It's something that stands out from the norm. And also if we say to somebody, you did really well, we say it was mitzuyan, which is also almost like mitzion, from Zion, mitzuyan. So all those words mean that there is something, a higher quality to this. And the word Zion, what is Jerusalem? Jerusalem is not only the city of David. Zion is not only the city of David. That's the lower city that was rediscovered by Charles Warren 150 years ago. Exactly 3 Jubilee cycles. The city ticks exactly on a cycle, and we can a little bit elaborate on that later. But also, it has Mount Moriah, because Mount Moriah is the place where the worship happens. That's the connection with God. Zion, or the lower city, the city of David, is the daily life, but also where the thrones of David was situated.
So the royalty.
Correct.
But the Mount Moriah will be more the priesthood.
That's it. And these two cannot be separated. In the Jewish lifestyle, those two always go together. And the Jewish king is there for one thing and one thing only, to pull the focus of the people to God. And that's why he needs to make sure that people understand the temple service. And that's why Jerusalem waited for David. David had to be crowned king over all the tribes, and that's when he moved to Jerusalem.
When we speak about all these things, there is also, it's important for all of us, like the Jewish people who are coming back to Israel. So Jerusalem is back as the capital of the people of Israel. And this was in 1967. So again, it's important to see there is a timing. There was like the British mandate, there was the state of Israel, then Jerusalem wasn't in the hand of the Jewish people, but suddenly in 1967 they have it. We can see there is something happening and an acceleration. Can you speak a bit about that too?
Let's break it down.
Yeah.
Firstly, Jerusalem is not the ancient capital, it's the eternal capital of the Jewish people. So even if the world couldn't see it, she has always, and if I say she, if you look at the Hebrew, it's always male or feminine, masculine or feminine, and the city is always a she. She will shake off her dust, she will be clothed in beautiful clothing again, etc. So just to clarify why I'm always using the word she. Always been the eternal capital of the Jewish people. There is certain principles that were just dormant. It continued, but then it will come back to the understanding of the world, to understand that as well. So 2,000 years, the destruction after Jerusalem was destroyed, Caesar Hadrian came and he built a whole new city on top of her. That's in the year 70, just after the destruction.
The Roman Empire.
Yeah, and he said, I don't want to be reminded of anything of these Jewish people that gave me so much nonsense. I'm just going to do a whole new thing. The way that he built the city also, you can see on the foundations that he shifted it, because he wanted to create a whole new way of looking at the city, and he called it Aela Capitolina. At the same time, he called the Judea and the Samaria, he called Palestine. That's where the word Palestine comes from, and it was called after the Philistines that didn't even existed at that stage. So city literally built upon city, built upon city. And that phenomenon that we get, or that what we see here in the Middle East, is you get the word Tel all the time. Tel Aviv, Tel Dan, it's a man-made hill. If you go to Jeremiah 30, verse 18, it says, V'nifneta ir al tila. At the end, this city has to be built on her Tel again. It means there's a dedicated location where this city was, and you will be able to see this Tel. And when when the excavations are done, you can actually see the different
levels.
So for this prophecy to be fulfilled, we first have to find this Tel again. And this Tel, this location, lies outside the old city. The verse goes on and it says, and the palace on its proper place. The word there is mishpato, is on its, mishpat is justice, on its just place. So we have to find a palace as well. And in 1993, 1995, Eilat Mazar actually found the palace area, what we believe is the palace area. So first finding the city, then finding the palace. We're gearing up for something.
And she was amazing too, this lady, because she was like, no, this is, and everybody was saying, no, it's not the place. How do you know? And she was like, she has some guts saying, no, this is, and she went for it when everybody was saying no.
And she said, because she was looking into the Bible. She said, the way that I found it was I was reading in the Bible. It said there was this king, Hiram of Tyre, and that's how she based everything. So this whole thing is speeding up. So this happened, the city itself being rediscovered in 150 years ago. So 2,000 years of city being built upon city. 1,000 years ago, there was a massive earthquake. And the last part of what we knew about the city of David became a quarry. And from there, everything moved into what we know today as the Old City. 450 years ago, Salem the Great in the Ottoman Empire came and he rebuilt the walls of the old city. And that's why everybody thinks that that's Jerusalem. They come to Jerusalem and they think, oh, I've just arrived at the most important place in the ancient city of Jerusalem. And meantime, the treasure lies just outside, so close, but you still didn't get to it. So we are on a spearhead here. We're 2,000 years, 1,000 years, and suddenly 150 years ago, he rediscovers it. 50 years later, Allenby liberates Jerusalem. And 50 years afterwards, we have the 67 war and Jerusalem got liberated. And 50 years after that, we had President Trump that came and he basically said he's moving his embassy. So by that, he says that Jerusalem is the capital.
Which is important because it's like suddenly one nation is not Israel who is declaring this is
the strongest nation.
That's it, the strongest nation in the world saying,
right now.
No, I'm recognizing Jerusalem. So he's being in alignment again.
That's it.
With Zion, not just Jerusalem. I think it's important that we say that, isn't it? And when
he came to the Western Wall, he actually he was one of the only president that went to pray there.
You're right.
So by that he also acknowledged that place as well. And the Western Wall, the Temple Mount, is actually the only place of Zion, of Jerusalem, that's inside the confines of the old city. So it says, take your rightful place. Actually, in Hebrew, it says, Shvi Yerushalayim. It means come, sit down, sit into who you are. So we need to get Jerusalem to take her rightful place again. And through what President Trump did, he basically said that he acknowledged that. And ultimately, the nations will do that as well. And she will ultimately become a praise to the earth.
Amazing. But what you are saying also, you have a verse. Could you speak about like the Zion and the little places? Because I think people need to see that what God is doing, He's placing Zion again in the right place. And it's us, He's asking us, okay, look now, Zion is there. And you have to look at her beauty. You need to discover her again. You need to align with Him and with her. Because if you align with her, you are aligning with God.
That's it. So Jerusalem, Zion is seen as the gateway to prayer. It's the way, and that's why in Jewish tradition we say it's the place where heaven kisses earth. So there's a gateway there, and prayers go through Jerusalem. That's why you have the sanctification process of the world, Israel, Jerusalem, and then you have in Jerusalem, Temple Mount with the court, the holies, and the Holy of Holies. Inside you have the ark, and even the ark, a three-part, it's gold, then it's wood, and then it's gold again. So you can see literally this telescope of sanctification. Now, Daniel, the Jewish people, wherever we were in the world for 2,000 years, we pray towards, 3 times a day, towards the temple, towards Jerusalem. When we are in Jerusalem, we pray towards Temple Mount. God says to his people in Jeremiah 31 that you have to put up markers, almost like Hansel and Gretel, that had to put the breadcrumbs for them to come back. But the word that he uses there, Zionim. Can you hear the word Zion within that word? So he says basically put little pieces of Zion that reminds you of Zion on the road so that you can come back. He says return.
You know, when you say that, it reminds me even like an aeroplane. When an aeroplane comes back.
When you have to have those lights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's light. So it's like,
Correct.
because I heard about like the light of Hanukkah, you know, there is light. There is the light that God has created before the sun and the moon. And it's like he's putting his little lights and say, okay, look, this is the
I'm lighting
light.
up for you.
I
You just have to come.
know.
So this is what he says here. Put up markers for yourself that you can return. Why finally now? Why do we have to focus back? The city itself is, as we said, is the gateway for people to pray to. And now that we know the true location, you would like to calibrate yourself. Because if you just a few millimeters, let's take a satellite dish. If you're a few centimeters or millimeters out on Earth, you thousands of kilometers out when you get to space. So the few meters, the 100 meters between where people think Jerusalem is and where it actually is, you want to calibrate yourself. You can calibrate yourself. For 2,000 years, we didn't know. Now we can calibrate ourselves exactly how to send your prayers. That makes you more efficient in your prayers if you know exactly how and where to pray to. Towards.
So this is very interesting when you speak about these signals. When I arrived in Jerusalem and I was reading my Bible and seeing Zion and Mount Moriah, at the end of reading all the Psalms, I'm like, okay, this is Mount Moriah, this is the Temple Mount. But when I go in the city, it's written Mount of Zion, which is where there is the tomb of David. So I was like, hey, something is wrong. And I spoke with the archaeologist, and he said, no, who is working also on the Temple Mountain with all the digging that they are doing. And he said, no, you're right. Mount Zion is Mount Moriah, and what they wrote is something different. Can you tell us a bit why is it like that and how it happened?
How did that happen?
Yes.
You know, many times, almost always, when you need to get to something very specific that God wants for you, there are a lot of mixed signals coming your way to try to pull you off your direction. So the first thing is the old city is so in your face there that people will just go, and it's old, so it can only be that. And then we have to go 450 years old. We're talking about 3,000 years old. The walls, many times when I walk through the old city, I see really people sincerely praying, believing that they are watchmen on the walls of Jerusalem. And then I shout at them and I say to them, guys, but you are on the wrong walls. You have to come to the 3,000 to 4,000 year old walls where Isaiah actually stood when he called up the watchmen. That's the first thing. The second thing is Mount Zion today, there wasn't a city there in the time of King David, which is very, very interesting. The city of David lies between the Tyropian Valley and the Kidron Valley. So after, in the times of the Crusaders decided, listen, we've got something new, we believe in something new, so we're going to just create a new Mount Zion as well. So they shifted literally the real Mount Zion, which is Mount Moriah.
That's
They
it.
shifted it to a different hill, just across the valley. Just across the valley.
But this is replacement theology. No, seriously, it's
Correct.
replacement. But it's like he makes us like looking at the wrong way. And as you say, God is putting markers now saying, hey, look, okay, this is the right city but this is not the exact spot, and you need to shift.
But on your map today, it will say Mount Zion, and people will go there, and they believe that they're on Zion, they're on Mount Zion. It is a very important hill, though. In the times of Hezekiah, if our viewers remember, the two kingdoms split. Yerovam, basically the king Yerovam put some barriers in, and it said basically that the people can't come back. And then when the 10 tribes got exiled by the Assyrian exile before the Babylonian, they got dispersed over the world. But a few of the refugees were running down to Jerusalem. And Hezekiah realized that the city is too small to be able to contain these people and to keep them safe. Then he built a massive, massive wall to be able to contain and keep these people safe as well. So that's when the city basically got enlarged to that hill. And you can see that that part was actually to keep the refugees of the 10 tribes safe. Mm-hmm. So it is an important hill, but it is not Zion, it's not Zion.
Mm-hmm. And it's so important that we are going back like in details. And again, the Torah, the Bible is really saying these special things. Now, you have here on the table the name Zion.
This is very important for me. I got a very special scribe from Jerusalem, sitting in Jerusalem, writing this. It is on the Torah cloth, so you can see that it's from leather. It looks like paper, but it's actually leather. It's parchment, the way that we use to write the Torah. Mm-hmm. It's very important. I want to say, just on a side note, the Nazis, when they burned the Torah, sometimes they would take the Torah scrolls and they will make lampshades or shoes or jackets. It's a very hard thing for us to even imagine what they did with that. But it's because it was made of leather. So it's a very, very thin leather. On it's written Zion, and it says here, for God chose Jerusalem. He chose Zion for his dwelling place, because that's where he desired. That's where his desire is. So that all on this parchment. Now, during the diaspora, the Jewish people, wherever they sojourned in the world, they had something telling them exactly what direction to pray towards Jerusalem, wherever we were in the world. So on the wall that faced Jerusalem, they would put something that they can always know exactly, very quickly. Boom, that's Jerusalem, that's my kivun, that's my direction, that's where I'm going to be one day again, the return. So the same thing that we're doing here. I encourage people to buy one of these. It's made in Jerusalem, so it's a piece of Zion that you can put as a marker in your house, and you can, when you pray, obviously we don't pray.
As Daniel
Exactly.
was doing that.
That's the
in
same
exile.
Principle.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same principle. We're not praying towards this. This is only an aid to help us to pray towards the gateway of prayer. And I would like, if you are serious about actively aligning yourself with the true location that we know right now in our generation, then you can participate in this. And for your family and your friends, I would like to see something like this in every house, so that the world can start focusing back to the place that God desires.
If he desired that, we want to desire that because we love him. Thank you very much, AnaRina. And it's wonderful to know that 9/10 of the beauty of the world has been given to Zion. We're going to align also with Zion because we love God. I want to see what he's going to do next week, next month, next year, in the coming years.